Hi everyone, I'm Brian Davis. Welcome to Brian Davis Scuba. In this video, I'm just going to take you through the diving we did last week. On Tuesday, we went out to the car barge and tug because we'd had a project on there to connect them both by chain. We've done that. We did it a few weeks ago, and we just wanted to go back, make sure that the chain was still positioned, just to make sure that it was connected nicely, and do a trial run going from the car barge around the tug and back. So that was the purpose of that dive. And as you can see, the viz is never great on the car barge and tug, but it was absolutely terrible. And I thought, yeah, let's show this dive, because you might get the impression that diving in Dubai is always really nice viz, or it's not great viz but it's still good and we can enjoy the dives, but we do on occasion get this certain times of the day, it depends on the tides and stuff, this very low 2 to 3 meter viz, which doesn't mean you can't still have a nice dive, but for a lot of inexperienced divers, newly qualified divers, they may not like it. And then on the following dive that we did, which was on the Saturday, we went out to see the jumbo. There was people on the jumbo, so we dived, and the divers came up and said they wanted to do a second dive, so I couldn't get the boat on there, so we diverted to the HB6. But when the divers came up, they did said the viz wasn't great and there was a current, which meant, you know, the jumbo wouldn't have been a very good dive anyway because it's quite exposed. So we went over to the HB6, which is always good in a current because we can just nip into the holds and go between the stern and the bow, and even if the viz is not great. So we got onto the HB6. We had a current. It wasn't anything we couldn't deal with, and we went down, but again the viz was atrocious. So here's, after the car barge footage, we'll show you the HB6, but you know, we still enjoyed the diving. So I hope you enjoy the footage. We'll have a talk when it's finished, but just as a teaser, we did dive the Nastaran 2 days ago, and we had beautiful viz. So that video's coming. That's the next one on the Dubai dive sites I'm uploading, with a little bonus footage of Victoria Star, which was our second dive. So enjoy the underwater footage. So here we are, just at sunrise, because it's because we're leaving at just after 6. We've got to go down the canal, but it doesn't really matter because the car barge is not too far offshore, and we should still be back after completing the dive before lunchtime. Our midweek dives, we like to just do one dive. We just go out to a wreck close by and come back, and then from this Saturday we actually start doing 2 dives a day because the weather's beautiful now. There we go, sun shining off the Burj Khalifa. Over here we've got the Dubai Design District. Just over there is Business Bay. We're just about 1 kilometre away from the car barge. There's no buoy on her. She's not considered a hazard to navigation because it's not very high wreck and it's close to the world islands anyway. You can see where we are in relation to the world. That's the northernmost edge of the world development. You can see the Burj Al Arab in the background there and the new Royal Atlantis. Get ready, go! So we descended down the line. We could see the viz wasn't going to be great, but we were right, virtually anchored just on the bow of the car barge, which was brilliant because we always have trouble hitting this wreck, and sometimes it takes us a couple of times. So our anchoring jinx seems to be over. There was no current at all. We just checked that the chain was still attached to the bow, and then we set off, follow it to the tug. We don't think the chain will last very long. It's only 3mm and it started to rust already, but as long as it lasts around 6 months, that will give us time to get some steel rebar pegs and, say, 1/2 meter long, drive them into the route along the chain, so it'll be a bit more permanent and last a bit longer. It also has less risk of being damaged by dragging fishing pots or anchors in the future. We get to the tug. The viz is awful. You know the viz is awful because we can see it, but when the GoPro also gives you bad viz, you can imagine. The GoPro always gives you a much better picture than what you actually see. But on the tug, lots of fish life. You can see there the volume of fish life on the tug is always intense, and they're definitely not used to divers. So we did a little circle round the tug and then back along the chain to the car barge. Went on to the top of the car barge, and you can see here we saw some fish, and then we decided to call it. I mean, the viz was just so bad, and we've dived this wreck a lot recently with finding it and then deciding to connect it in the tug, so we called it a day and went back up to the surface. So as usual on a Saturday, a very early start. We were through the floating bridge by 5:30, but we were rewarded when we got out to sea with this beautiful sunrise. So here we are, just coming up to the HB6. All in, just 3 of us diving, Stevie on his scooter, Diane and I on fin power. So we descended down onto the wreck. We knew in advance the viz wasn't going to be good. There was a slight current running. You can see the particles whizzing by us just here, but that didn't perturb us. Down onto the wreck, and just to my left there was barracuda everywhere. I filmed them, but they didn't come out in the film. The viz was that bad. But we did get some queenfish, as you just saw, and we got some more barracuda coming later. Jellyfish were around, first time we've seen them this year. On the wheelhouse, this batfish was an absolute superstar. He wouldn't go away. He just wanted to be on the camera. We did see a shoal later on, and you will see the footage. They were around the stern. They just swam past us. They weren't interested at all, which is very unusual for batfish. But the usual fish were there, the snapper and the bream. So it's still a nice dive because there's always plenty of fish to see. There they are. There's the runaway batfish. I don't know what they were up to. But up on the gunnels, there's always plenty of snapper, bream, sometimes a little grouper you'll find in there. We don't see big ones anymore on these wrecks. I think they've been hunted away. Here the barracuda, and then Stevie decided to shine his torch on them so you can actually see them a bit better. And they're reasonable sized barracuda, and they're back for the winter now. On the wheelhouse, always lots and lots of fish, but even the yellow bar angelfish, they were a bit skittish today, so I don't know what happened with those and the batfish. These guys were a bit better, but anyway, it was a good dive, and we set off back home via the SMB, where we had marks for 2 more wrecks which we located, and we'll dive later. The sea was amazing, and we're back at the canal now, so a good day out. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. You know, the diving's not always rosy in Dubai, but we still enjoy it. So yeah, it wasn't great viz. Again, not every dive's like that, as you've seen from my videos, and with a bit of planning you can nearly always get better viz. In general, dive when the tidal coefficient is 80 or below, and dive on a rising tide from about mid-tide up. As soon as you get past the high tide, the Gulf is emptying again, out through the Straits of Hormuz, a very narrow gap in ocean terms, so you tend to get stronger currents when the tides are going down rather than when the Gulf is filling up. Thanks for watching. The next video, as I said, is the Nastaran, which is an American landing craft. I think it was built in 1945, sank in 1970 off Sharjah in the UAE. We had a great dive on there the other day. Great viz, best viz I'd ever had on that wreck, and it was, as I said, approaching past mid tide to high tide. We had no current and we thoroughly enjoyed it. So please subscribe and like not to miss that video.